A summit of 12 South American leaders is taking place in Brazil, aimed at reviving cooperation in the region. Brazil's president, Inazio Lula da Silva, is hosting the gathering following years of fractious relations between the countries attending the event. The meeting includes Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro. He's visiting Brazil for the first time since it restored relations with Caracas that had been severed by former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. And Maduro's presence in Brazil is a sign of growing acceptance of Venezuela by some countries in the international community. His government is considered to be authoritarian and illegitimate by dozens of countries around the world. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice charged the Venezuelan leader and other high-ranking officials with narco-terrorism, corruption, and drug trafficking. Now, Maduro aspires to oversee his country joining the BRICS group of leading emerging nations. Brazil's Lula said he would welcome the move.
There are several proposals from other countries that want to join BRICS, and we are going to discuss it because it does not depend on Brazil's will. It depends on everyone's will. We will discuss it if there is an official request. This request will officially be taken to BRICS, and we will decide there. If you ask me, what do I think? I'm in favour of it.
For his part, Maduro said membership of BRICS for Venezuela would contribute to a new multipolar world order.
We need to build a new geopolitical order with fundamental components. One of them is the Union of South America with our diversities. And together with BRICS, we have seen in the geopolitical sphere an element where we can advance in the union of these 5 very powerful countries.
Let's dig deeper and bring in Ivo Hernandez from the University of Münster in northern Germany. He is a political scientist from Venezuela. Mr. Hernandez, good to see you. Why exactly is Lula rolling out the red carpet for a man who just months ago was banned from even entering Brazil?
Well, there are many reasons to that. Mainly, I think Lula is reissuing his former foreign policy, the way he used to do it when he was in power a couple of years ago. Actually, we see that UNASUR, as he's trying to inaugurate now, is this old organization founded in 2008, and he's bringing Nicolas Maduro, who is the heir of former Lieutenant Colonel Chavez, at that time the president of Venezuela, who inaugurated with him UNASUR. So we see all this display of sort of like a new diplomacy that has old roots, somehow to speak.
Mm-hmm. Lula criticized that Venezuela had been ostracized because of what he called constructed narrative of authoritarianism, but the human rights violations and repression in the country are very well documented. So how do the other South American leaders at the meeting feel about Maduro?
Well, not everybody's on that line. You have to understand that, for example, the president of Chile, Boric, and the president of Uruguay have stood aside to this reaction. Also, we see in the press today, in many newspapers, quotes, for example, the former president of Spain, Felipe González, saying Maduro is actually guilty of crimes against humanity. And the OAS, Organization of American States, has well documented, as you just said it, many of those things. So this is a very complicated issue. People are accusing, also internally, Lula is trying to whitewash Maduro, which would be a very sad initiative to start this whole new political display of diplomacy, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. It does seem like Maduro has slowly been creeping back into the international fold, though, doesn't it? Last year, the U.S. even eased some of the sanctions against his regime. Are the times of him being a pariah over?
From a very pragmatic point of view, what you're saying could be seen as right. Indeed, the Biden administration has softened some of the sanctions. You could see that especially in the oil arena. Some approaches have been nearing. However, that being said, sanctions still exist against many of the people working in the Maduro government. Maduro himself is a pariah in the sense that he cannot travel internationally as he would like to, and he did before. So we still see that here. Perhaps Lula's being a little bit naive in all this. He's just trying to talk about BRICS, trying to talk about peace groups, trying to talk about UNASUR. Overstretching the capacity of Brazil is also making it weak. We have to see closer steps and probably more secure steps toward things that could be done, really. Not this very easy talk and say, okay, we're doing new geopolitical strategies and all that. It's complicated. Also, the alliance, the supposed electric alliance between Roraima, the state in Brazil, and the south part of Venezuela, that's highly unlikely, though it was spoken about, and Maduro promised 190 megawatts and all that. Venezuela does not have the capacity to do that, so that's going to be more the cheap talk than reality here.
Maduro is back on the international stage, though, and he certainly likes the look and feel of that. What does that mean for the people in Venezuela, his rehabilitation of sorts?
Rehabilitation might be too big a word. We have to see this walking on 2 feet. He has been invited by Brazil. These two men know each other well for decades, actually, and they share a very common project. They have very close ties to Havana, Cuba. They do have a lot of perspectives around the world. The perspective they have is shared, is common. Whether that is also agreed upon by other presidents is highly dubious. That's not so easy to be accepted. So we have to see if all this meeting, by the way, most of them done closed door, are going to have any repercussion or any consequence in the future. That has to be seen yet.
It does give him a legitimization, though, right? And we've spent years talking about how the Venezuelan regime is not actually the legitimate government of Venezuela. So if he were to see himself cemented in power through this international stage that he is being given and through the international alliances that he is forging more and more, what would that mean for the people in his country?
Well, certainly not many good things. Think of what we just talked about, all these crimes against humanity, all these documents about torture, all these political prisoners that have been many a time signaled and selected and shown to people. This is really bad what's going on. There are organizations, international NGOs working on the matter. So we do have a problem here. Whitewashing Maduro this fast would not be convenient, neither for the situation internally in Venezuela, nor perhaps for the region that has some aspirations, some left-wing governments who would like to distance a little bit from the old ways of doing things, as, for example, Nicaragua and Venezuela still do.
Venezuela was once South America's richest country, but those days are long gone. Lula and Maduro have been openly floating the possibility of Venezuela joining the BRICS. How realistic is that?
Very unlikely. The BRICS, as you know, is a group of countries that are very promising economically. Venezuela is an almost failed state, bankrupt, almost the once flourishing oil industry that was an example to the world in many ways is today completely bankrupt, is in ruins. And it's very unlikely that Venezuela has anything to offer. Like I said, one of the problems of this reissuing UNASUR and all these organizations is that they're very ideologically motivated. Does that have a substance on economic development and production? Not very much. It is more the ideological leaning to an idea. And that's what UNASUR and these organizations have been. They open when governments in that direction favor them, and they close when they do not have support.
Maduro talked about a multipolar world order. We heard it there before we started talking. That is something we hear a lot coming out of Russia and China. And how big is the desire in South America to shake off the reputation of being Washington's backyard?
Well, you bring in an excellent point. You have to see that Lula's agenda from the moment he took power in January has been extremely active. He was in China, he's been in Europe, he was in the United States. He's trying to move all over the world, and he's presenting Brazil as a sort of like an active diplomatic actor. Whether Latin America can follow those steps, the steps of Brazil, is to be seen yet, because as we see, the region is having a very turbulent time right now. Many governments are having internal problems. The case of Argentina, the case of Venezuela, they're not so easy. They're having massive inflations again, and we're seeing economic turmoil. That has to have also political consequences. Brazil and Lula, with his experience, is trying to make things faster and better. Whether he'll be able to achieve it, that's something different. So that's why I said the word naive in the beginning. It might be too much. Overstretching that capacity makes it also very weak.
Lots of moving parts there. Ivo Mora Hernandez, of the University of Munster. Thank you so much.
Thank you.